All right, welcome to the Red Man Group Live, coming at you from the 21 Summit for the 15-year anniversary. We're excited to bring you guys a different kind of panel. 3 years ago was when 21 first started introducing the Patriarch edition, and what it was a very specific focus on the state of fatherhood and how we can promote it better in society, how we can create better fathers, and how we can bring more of a welcome embrace to the idea of fatherhood in general. And it's moved into a really good direction because there's no way that you can make a movement happen if it doesn't transition into the next generation. And so for a men's movement or a movement on masculinity and the betterment of masculinity to be able to reach its full potential, it has to hit fathers. And so we're really excited about what this has done. And we've got some great fathers on the panel today. So why don't we start over here to my left? I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves and then give us an idea of what it was that you spoke on while you were here this weekend.
My name is Jeff Younger, and I spoke on what's happening with transgender issues, my ex-wife trying to transition my son to a girl, and what that means for fathers in the future.
Really concise.
Well done.
More, Jeff. My name is Michael Foster. I got to host the Patriarch conference. It was great. I talked about a man's legacy, and it's not that men are disposable. People always say, why do women and children go first? Well, they don't go first because women and children have a greater value in essence than the father does, but because they represent his future, his legacy, the very thing he's trying to build. So I talked about that and how fraternity and a good woman, the right man and the right woman, is key to building the patriarchy, building a legacy that lasts forever.
Awesome. Okay. So my name's Tanner Guzzi. I spoke on the idea of having our children be oriented more towards their peers or being oriented towards us as their parents, and how parent orientation not only ties into the idea of being able to transfer values and goals and identity and these things that actually hold civilization together, but it's also so crucial for our kids to get a sense of who they actually are. Whereas when they're peer-oriented, they lose themselves in the identity of whatever group it is that they belong to, and they never fully develop into functional, healthy beings with any real sense of self or self-esteem.
All right. Hi, I'm Cornell Smith. I'm the paternity coach. While I normally would speak on behalf of parental alienation and helping dads be active dads, because I'm familiar with that, I spoke today about my book, Trapped by Law, and how over 1 million men and boys have been falsely named and implicated as the father of a child for a pregnancy that he didn't commit, and they face jail and prison on a resounding basis, facing a unsympathetic legal system in family law.
Hi, excuse me. My name is Trevor Loudon, and I speak on Marxism, that most of the social ills we see around us, the feminist ills, the LGBTQ movement, many of the other destructive forces in our society are part of a long-term Marxist program to completely overturn our existing social order and replace it with a tyranny like we've never seen before. So all of the problems we're addressing here pretty much have their roots in Marxism to some degree or another.
Okay, great, thank you. One thing to give you guys a heads up on, and for you guys that are listening as well, what we would like this particular panel to be is more openly conversational, as opposed to my moderating and kind of asking specific feedback from anybody else. So jump in at any point when you want to. Okay. One of the questions that I would like to start with, especially because so many of you guys have addressed really heavy topics and you're dealing with incredibly difficult things, is there anything, and if so, what is worth being optimistic about with fatherhood right now?
Sure, I'll go.
Okay, please.
You can't smash gravity, and you can't smash the patriarchy. It's a part of the cosmos. It's part of the design. It's not going anywhere. You can have setbacks, and we're in a setback, right? We're in a deep, dark valley. It can go deeper, right? But it is a valley, and we will spring back out of this. And we are seeing events like this, where so many different segments of the culture, different types of people are here, and politically, religiously, just even the aspects we come at, but they're still focused on building up fatherhood, building up children, protecting it from legal standpoints, all of that. So I think the presence of something like this should be very encouraging. Like, it's not, most of us don't do this because we get a ton of money or something like that. It's because we care about the movement, we care about fathers, and it's across race, social status, and even religion in this case. There's a lot of reasons to be very optimistic.
So do you think that spring back, that kind of coming out of the valley, is something that's inevitable and we're just kind of a part of the momentum of it? Or is it something that really is going to require some intentionality, some work, some sacrifice, some organization on our part?
Yeah, I think it's inevitable because it flows from our nature, but that it still requires effort, right? And so, yeah, we have to do things like this. These conferences are helpful when they don't remain totally theoretical. You need theory, but you need like practical steps to come out of that, and that's what you're hearing a lot.
Okay, that makes sense.
Can I chime in from this side too? I'm encouraged by the fact that a lot more people are seeing that there is a need and value in having the father actively involved in the child's life, and that the father is a great counter toward juvenile, to feeding children into the juvenile justice system, the prison pipeline. But they also see that there's also a need for keeping men and boys out of a prison system for paternity fraud. When I started doing this over 21 years ago, people attempted to shame me and laugh me out to talk on the topic, try to get me to be silent. What I have observed, though, is a lot more people are saying, truth is really not a bad thing.
Thankfully.
It is good that, yes, if we have fathers involved, then mom wouldn't have the 100% of the load. I was like, yeah, I've been saying that for decades.
So do you think that it's an embrace of truth, or do you think that it's more of a selfish, they're seeing the utility of fathers and they don't want to carry the load themselves? Or is it both? I mean, those aren't mutually exclusive, but.
They're not mutually exclusive, but I'll say, I think, with some selfish motivation, that rather than complain about why does mom have to do all the work by herself, it's like, hello, why does dad have to fight you to see the kid?
Right.
Instead of saying, why didn't dad fight harder? I say there's a lot more of the public are embracing this position. Look, why did he have to fight in the first place?
Amen. Yeah. He shouldn't have to fight to see his kids unless he's an absolute degenerate of a father. Yeah.
Well, how about the hypocrisy, right? You say you want dads to be involved, but then you erect legal barriers and a huge wall. You got to be Superman to jump over that freaking wall. And the cost of admission, if you don't have a $25,000 retainer, you can't even get in the game.
Right. But what you're seeing to be optimistic about is that there's a cultural shift away from that. There's a recognition of the problems that exist within that, and that creates potential to actually remove a lot of those barriers. You don't need that retainer. That it's not that hard to get over that massive wall.
At least at some of the lower income levels, they've seen the magic in, if we help these dads see their kids, they will pay the child support without being forced. It's like, duh.
You mean if they have an emotional investment and they actually have a relationship, then they're more inclined to want to facilitate that and help that out?
Precisely.
That's insane.
Precisely, my good man. Precisely.
I have to tell you, Carnell, I Googled you to find out, and one of the top articles was from 2011 and was entitled, "Whatever Happened to Carnell Smith?" I was like, he's in front of me on the stage right now, still doing his thing.
Well, the radical feminists are somewhat disappointed that I haven't been silenced by their attempts to shame me, to try to guilt trip me. Oh, you are against women. I'm like, okay, I'm a guy, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a grandfather, I have a daughter, I have 2 granddaughters, I have 7 sisters. How could I possibly survive in my family hating women? When it was one of my own sisters who first turned me on to the sheer volume of women who commit paternity fraud. I tried to defend my ex against my sister's claim. And there's a dedication in my book as a big public apology to my sister. She knew something that I didn't know about the very nature of those who have openly embraced the radical feminist position that you can do everything that men can do without the accountability and without the responsibility piece. I'm like, oh, no. You want to do everything that the men can do. It's okay that you want to live a lifestyle where you have as many as the head count that you can stand. Mm-hmm. However, there are consequences and repercussions that go with that.
Right. And
you don't get to avoid those.
Oh, that's adulthood.
There you go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Radical concept.
Yeah. I know, it's wild.
Yeah, see, can I excuse me. See, you're talking about the paternity fraud. The paternity fraud happens because there are government benefits, there are government largesse for lying. We're seeing this in the COVID epidemic now. Hospitals lie and inflate their figures because there is a financial incentive to do so.
You're right.
So the real problem is socialism. Mm-hmm. When you have government getting involved in areas it should not, it creates the possibility of getting benefits, of getting handouts, of getting money that is not deserved. So Ayn Rand used to say socialism wasn't that socialism encouraged a few bastards. It turned good men into bastards. Mm-hmm. It turns honest people into thieves and crooks and liars. And so when these young women have a financial incentive to lie and screw up a young man's life, that is the same principle that doctors have when they inflate COVID figures. Yes. Or when people, we see socialism all over the place where or business people who milk the system, get money they shouldn't deserve because it's there on offer. Socialism corrupts people's souls. It corrupts people's morality, and that is the root cause of many of the problems we're facing now. So to end these corrupt practices, we have to end socialism.
Well, I think the irony of this is that it's largely a chicken and egg situation, because one of the biggest bulwarks against socialism is a strong culture that isn't prone to these perverse incentives, that isn't so willing to throw out their integrity and their morality for the sake of some extra financial incentive. And that kind of structure and culture is only maintained by a civilization that values the nuclear family. Yes. And so if you have strong families, they're much more prone to resist the allure or the siren song of socialism. But when you have weak families and then socialism gets its hooks in and it can further weaken the family, then it becomes this downward spiral and it becomes more and more difficult for us to dig ourselves out of it.
And can I add to that? Yeah. That the system also seeks to, at that point, to protect itself.
Right.
Because some of my greatest opposition to legislative reform has come even at the executive level in state government.
Yep.
After successfully getting legislation in California passed through the Assembly and through the Senate, someone lied to the governor, the former governor, Gray Davis, and told him that if you pass the Paternity Justice Act of 2000, you know what year it is now, so to give you an idea how long I've been at this, if you pass this bill, the state of California will lose $40 million. So he vetoed the bill. And I asked this question to the legislators. We had enough legislative support to override the governor's veto. There was not enough people in the room with kahunas to go over the governor.
Right.
So what did that say? The system was more willing to preserve the status quo in how it currently operated, and California was so good at getting orders against men and boys that over 80% of their orders in the 90s were established by default.
Yeah.
Now, why protect the system if you claim that it's all about helping the people? Well, then socialism is not really trying to help the people, right?
Okay, so we've hit on some heavy stuff, and I know for three of you gentlemen, it's your first year at this event, and there's some kind of I don't want to say trepidation, but you don't know what you're getting into when you come to an event like this. One of the things that I have found as I've attended over the years is a lot of the men who are here question whether it's even worth it to become a father. There's so many legal battles. There's so much potential danger. There's the fact that really on a whim, she can take your kids and the government will reinforce that you can go through the hell, Jeff, that you're in the middle of absolutely going through. So I know I said I was going to keep this open, and I still want to, but I would like to hear from each of you. We'll start over here with you, Jeff, if you don't mind. Is being a dad worth it?
Yes, being a dad's worth it. But I think young men need to know what they're in for. And under the current legal regime that regulates marriage in any of the 50 states, your posterity is not secured. You, as a father, inevitably enter into a long-term war against the state. The state profits, in the state of Texas gets $500 million, $500 million, that's with a B, dollars from divorce in federal reimbursements for divorce. And the only way they get that money is if fathers don't have 50-50 custody of their kids.
Yep.
Fathers have to be paying child support or they don't get that money. Judges' retirement is paid for from those reimbursements. Judges' retirement goes up every time they assign child support. So they're highly incented not to give you equal custody with your kid in divorce. And I think we should ask ourselves, what are the temptations for women in marriage? Because most of these divorces are being initiated by women.
Yeah.
And we're asking women to, on a very bad day and perhaps a number of years where they might have trouble in their marriage. I mean, every marriage has years like that.
Right.
You're asking them to suffer through a temptation like this. They could take the house, half of all the financial assets, the children, 30% of the gross income of their husband, get sole control of the children, and we're asking them to just don't do that because it takes nothing for them to file. And so I think we need to think about the incentives that women have as well for filing for divorce and think about how we can change that.
Yeah.
I'd love to know that going in.
I would love to dive into that because I think that's a really key thing that a lot of people miss out on. Let me ask you though, why is it worth it? I mean, because you're hitting on all this, I want to hit that, but why is it worth it? Why, if you could go back, I mean, I know you love your kids, you wouldn't go back and do it any differently as far as having them. So with all of this in front of you, what is it that makes fatherhood so wonderful that you're willing to go through all of it?
Well, I don't think a lot of these things are expressible in words, but the very first time that I saw my son watch me shaving, and he picks one up that doesn't have a razor on it and starts copying me, and I see that my boys start to live their life the way I live my life. They get up early like me. The first thing they ask is what needs to be done. They play really, really, really hard as they work, maybe harder than they work. That they copy the way I talk. That they pray 5 times a day like I do. And they got that from me.
Yeah.
Seeing my sons develop into the life that my ancestors and my fathers gave me has been the most intensely important thing I've ever done in my life. Nothing in my life can even possibly compare to that. Passing on my belief in God and these things to my sons. And then to watch my sons help other boys who don't have fathers do the same thing. And you just see how powerful your fatherhood is. It expands and your power goes into the world through your sons and daughters. I don't know how to explain that in words, but maybe if you've ever had the experience of a child copying your practices and your spiritual life and so forth, you understand.
I love it. I love it. What about you, Pastor Michael? Why do you love being a dad?
Well, let me see if I can tie some of the topics together, actually.
Yeah, please do.
In the book of Exodus, Pharaoh is scared of an uprising from the Israelites. So what he does is he tries to use the Hebrew midwives, women, to murder the firstborn sons, future patriarchs of Israel. Because he knows that strong fathers, strong men, a legacy, would be a threat to his tyranny, right? So why is it worth being fathers, right? Because there is such thing as an evil patriarchy that needs to be smashed, right? But there's also a good patriarchy. And if we back out of fatherhood, who will stand up to these tyrants? Who will push them back? You can think of authority as like energy. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, right? Authority can't be created or destroyed.
Right, and it's amoral, like energy is.
Yeah, and so when you lose, when we give up our authority, it goes somewhere. In the case as either we gave up authority through abdication, laziness, or it was taken from us through some means. It went into the government. And now the government's Papa, right? The government's the evil patriarch in this.
Ironically, yes.
And again, they're using women against men, just like Pharaoh did, just like the devil did, just like the Philistines did. This is nothing new. These are ancient problems. So I love that through having my sons and daughters, I am building up households, future households that will tear this stuff down and build a free land where my grandchildren and great-grandchildren can live and have a taste, at least a taste of what I had. That's one reason it's worth it.
So it's the taking energy and authority and putting it into a moral context, wresting it from the immoral and giving it back to the moral.
And taking it back from these people. It's okay for the government to have authority.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you have three institutions. You have the family, you have the church, and you have the state. Right? There's fine, but they each have their place and they have their limits. And the problem is fathers have to take it back, because here's what we all know about governments is that they don't give back once you give something to them, right?
Right.
And we are not going to be able to take it back by more government. You can't fix more
But
government.
I thought we were one law away from freedom.
That's what they want you to keep thinking, right? They want you
Right.
on the treadmill, in the hamster ball, so to speak.
Okay, I love that. Awesome, thank you. Cornell, how about you, sir?
Well, I say there is some good news about fatherhood. I've been married for 31 years to the woman that I selected. But after my experience with family court, being an alienated dad, I saw that fighting to get to see my kid was something that didn't make any sense at all, because I hadn't committed no crime. I was okay in everybody's eyes until suddenly we had two different addresses. And once we had two addresses, the court seemed to work toward minimizing my contact and engagement in the life of my son.
Yeah, you become the villain.
Yeah, I was a villain by proxy. But now, in the marriage with my wife, there was a different life for my daughter, because she got to see me every day. She got to see me all throughout the day, be engaged. I was her STEM tutor. I showed up at school. I got to see and participate on the side that I didn't before. Why would that be encouraging? Is that after my experience of how to do it the wrong way, I became much more discerning and critical about my selections of dating after that. I took a 3-year hiatus and quit dating altogether, and I just spent time working on improving me to be the best me that I could be. And I've said, I'm worth it, and I'm not going to let anybody else treat me this way. And if they can't get with my program, they can go do whatever else the heck they want to do. So what I would encourage the younger men to do is to have a standard and be clear on what your value proposition is and what you want. And make sure that if you're going to even date someone, that they are in alignment with you. If you guys are running in two different directions, I believe the Bible talks about that two people can't walk together that are not in agreement. Well, if you're going to go down the path towards something more solid, more meaningful, to build a foundation, to build a family, that you guys got to somewhere get on the right page before you get to the matrimonial section. Right? But it is possible, because at 31 years of marriage, I can truthfully say about my wife, I would marry her again. But there was something different about her. She was untainted by the radical feminism based on the choices that she made, and she willingly resisted the influences of the culture.
And you could find that and be attractive to a woman like that because of the self-development and the personal work that you would put in.
Yes, and she was and she was comfortable in her femininity, and she didn't have that masculine energy to want to compete and argue and fight and all of that kind of crazy stuff that I experienced before.
I think that's one of the ironies, is that a lot of men who are timid about the idea of certainly fatherhood, but even long-term relationship, marriage in general, there's a whole different conversation to have about the idea of the state being involved, but we'll just say marriage as is they don't realize that you don't get the entirety of what that relationship can be unless you are family-minded and she is also family-minded.
Exactly.
So you only get to operate on 80% arbitrarily, but on some small percentage of what the actual potential of that relationship is. If all you're focused on is you, or even if all you're focused on is each other, it's not until you embrace the entirety of the family that relationship can reach its full culmination.
Yeah, because if I be frank about it, after my experience with the family law system, man, I was determined I was never going to be a dad again.
Yeah.
Under no circumstances, under anything. But then my wife talked to me about what her heart was and that was unfair to hold that against her.
Yeah.
For what someone else had done.
Yeah, no, don't punish her for what this other woman had done.
Exactly. I'm logical. I'm fair-minded. And I was like, that makes a whole lot of sense.
You got me.
I'm like, yes, Your Honor, I plead guilty on all of the charges.
You got me. Good man. All right, Trevor, how about you? What do you love about being a dad?
Yeah, I think it's, for any man, it's the most challenging and rewarding responsibility that you can take on. You're watching somebody grow, you're influencing somebody, but it gives you an incentive to make things better in every way. Because you look into your own life and say, well, I'm going to be dead in 20 years. I don't really care what happens. I can get through. But when you're looking at your children and the world you want to pass on to them, it's a massive incentive to make things better, to set injustices right, to fight for what you believe in. So I think it's very personally satisfying. It's very, very challenging. It's hard at times, but I wouldn't swap it for anything.
Yeah.
I love that you said that way, because as I've asked this, I've been thinking about this myself too, and you hit the nail perfectly on the head, because invested fatherhood, where it's not that just you created a baby and you're doing enough to not have it get in the way, but you're actually emotionally, financially, spiritually, physically, in every way invested in your children. And nihilism are mutually exclusive. You cannot be a nihilist and be an involved father. You can't. And so everything that's ugly about nihilism, everything that's ugly about the hedonism that comes from it, everything that's ugly about government structures that create it, or social structures that facilitate it, or everything else, is impossible to maintain or to tolerate or to allow when you have invested parents. And so it really is the linchpin for any goodness in any sort of civilization, is when you think bigger than yourself or bigger than what your current generation, especially because when you have kids and you see this innate goodness in them, you see this beauty of not only what their potential is, but the beauty in what they currently are, it is impossible to be a nihilist. Yeah. All you can see is potential greatness. And so it's huge. It's so powerful. So thank you for hitting that off that way. That's massive.
And it'll bring out the warrior in you too.
Oh yeah.
Because what you may not get involved in before, but when your kid's on the table and the stakes are that high, it can motivate the warrior in you.
Yep. Absolutely. Okay, I want to come back, Jeff, with what you're talking about, because this is this is the thing that a lot of men refuse to realize, is because you either get this kind of extreme ownership, which is very good, and we as men are prone to do this, where there's a problem, and so the burden of responsibility is on me to fix it. And then you also get a lot of guys who get really cynical, and they kind of treat women as if they are big children, or that they don't have any ability to override their programming. And so whatever the incentives are for them to be able to pull the plug on their marriage, they're just going to follow it, because they don't have any free will of their own. They're not rational beings the way that we are, and so it's impossible. I think both of those are pretty stupid arguments. Women are capable of being just as well thought, or just as moral, or just as rational in a complementary way to how we as men are. So what are the kind of incentives that we can create so that women won't pull the trigger on the incentives that the state or the current culture provides for easy divorce, for being able to just pull and bail as soon as it gets difficult.
So, I'm one of these guys that I go, well, why did the divorce rate spike up? And I go, what were we doing before that when it wasn't so high? Why were parents cooperating before the 1960s? And a lot of it had to do with cultural factors, right? People, I think, were more committed to the family. One of the things is, all you'll ever hear talked about nowadays is the individual. But actually, the smallest unit of social organization is the family, not the individual.
Amen.
We should not be individualists. We should be focused on the family as the smallest unit of social organization. And the mother and father should have rights. And with those rights are concomitant duties. And socially, those duties were enforced. One way they were enforced was through shaming. We've forgotten that.
Right.
It wasn't, in my father's hometown, it was not uncommon for men to endure beatings should they abandon their children. This was not uncommon. And I mean serious beatings. And public humiliation. This was not uncommon. So there was a social aspect to it. The laws were different. Effectively the laws said that whoever leaves the marriage without cause loses the children.
Because you've abandoned the family unit.
Yes.
Exactly.
You didn't abandon the marriage, you abandoned the family.
Right.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the law allowed, in Texas at least, allowed 5 causes for ending a marriage without such consequence. One would be infidelity.
Which is abandoning the family.
So we need to sort of take a winner-takes-all attitude. If you want to leave a marriage, well, we have this individualist legal system that will let you do that, but you don't take anything with you when you go. The wealth and the children stay together with the parent who was loyal to the family. The disloyal person gets nothing except their freedom. And that would take away a massive
changes a lot of
component.
incentive.
I gave a talk to the ladies today, and there's a really good study. It's one of the only such studies that's ever been done. It's called These Boots Are Made for Walking, Why Most Divorce Filers Are Women. It was done in an economics journal because it couldn't have been done in a sociology journal. And the only way they can find any correlation to why it's women is it's to obtain sole control of the children. And I think a lot of men do the opposite. They want to get away from their children. They don't want to be with their children. And I think you have to just say that if you leave without cause, you don't take anything with you. You got your freedom, but you're leaving butt naked.
How do we do that? Because we've all heard the idea that politics is downstream of culture, laws are downstream of culture. How do we, and even I'd love, Michael, how you introduced the idea of you have these institutions of the family, the church, and the state. And I think one of the issues that we butt up against is that we get so focused on changing the laws and changing our relationship with law and government, and tend to not focus on how we can change the culture that we're in. And it doesn't have to be a macro change in a culture, but even our micro culture, the culture within our own families, the culture within our extended families, within our neighborhoods. I know for me, for example, and this is one of the reasons why this hits a little bit closer, is I'm in Utah. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Our divorce rate, sadly, is climbing like a lot of the world, but it's not nearly what it is for most of you. And it's not because the laws in Utah are any more friendly towards men, or it doesn't make it, the laws are the same. In fact, in a lot of cases, they're worse than a lot of other states.
It's the culture.
But there's the cultural component of what our church is, and the shame or the fear or the consequences, the eternal consequences that come with it. And it's fascinating how much more of a buffer that creates, to the point where it doesn't even have to go to the legal component, because that's a stopgap that never even gets tapped into. And so what is it that we can do to be able to create cultural change? Because that, we need to do both. We need to do all of it. But what is it that we can do to create cultural change while we are at the same time working to be able to change the legal stuff, especially because as we change the culture, it will be easier to change the laws as well.
We've got to be done with being grill Americans, right? I think it's Curtis Yavin, or I don't know where I picked this up, but these are Americans that just want to be left alone and grill and drink their beer, right? You can't do that. They will not leave you alone.
Nope.
And so just not being passive anymore. Like, Jeff got involved and learned all the things you could do, right? One man could do.
Yeah.
And you learned how the system worked. It'd be nice for us all to start getting involved, though, proactively before something bad happens, right? Whether it's just in your local HOA or school board or whatever, that's one thing. Bring back action. Fathers actually taking action in their local community and responsibility for it and modeling that to their children. And then when people are passive and not taking responsibility for themselves, you should shame them, right? Like, shame is good. When it's shaming the right things, like pain's good. When you step on a nail, your body hurts.
It should be a motivator for change.
Yeah, it should if your buddy, I had a friend that was getting ready to ditch his wife, and I said, man, that's terrible. You should be ashamed of yourself, right? I love him, but it's
And you
shameful.
said that because you love him.
I did. It's shameful. You don't want to do that. Like, it's not where you guys are at yet. And so it's not about hate, right? That's not the same thing.
Right.
But it's like, that's shameful behavior. We have to have, there's no sense of shame.
Right.
That's how we can have men, big, fat, hairy, ugly men dress up like women and read in our libraries.
It's insane.
It's shameful.
Right.
It is.
Have you no shame?
They don't, and that's what it is. It's a push to remove any sense of shame. No, it's not even that. It's a push to make you feel a sense of shame for having shame.
That's exactly
It's a complete
right.
perversion of the utility and the morality of shame.
And so we don't want to shame people for being good fathers, for taking action, for being manly, or women being feminine, but we do want to shame people for getting away from the responsibilities, right? In our culture, we have to return a sense of right and wrong to our culture. It's decadent.
Yeah.
Social norms
Can I
have
pivot
just
on
been
that?
consistently attacked. If you had to generalize the movements that are attacking the family, it's the destruction of all social norms and the uplifting of transgression of all those norms. And even when they create these new perverse norms, they begin to transgress those.
Right. So you never have a sure footing.
Never.
Yeah.
Never.
Well, see, what is revolution? We have certain hierarchies that we have been given. Revolution is overturning the natural hierarchies.
Right.
You see, even Jordan Peterson, who I admire a lot, gets this wrong. He's always criticizing hierarchy. Hierarchy is a very valuable thing. We have, God, man, nature is one hierarchy that is extremely valuable. Father, mother, children.
Yeah.
Parent, child, master, apprentice. Revolution is overturning the natural hierarchy. And so we have to value hierarchy. And churches have even gotten away from this. A pastor is no longer the leader of the church. He's just one of the friends. He's just one of the boys,
Yeah.
The father is not respected as the leader of the household. When we destroy hierarchy, we are getting into a revolutionary situation, because we were given these hierarchies by God to run an ordered, structured life.
Yes.
When we abolish these hierarchies or disrespect these hierarchies, we are falling into chaos. And that chaos is what is needed to establish a new hierarchy run by the opposition team, not the team that we would want to be on.
Anthony, we need to make hierarchy great again, hat, please.
Yes.
That would be, thank you.
and if I could contribute to this, that within my community, the African American community, or the Americans of African descent, a reversal happened where it used to be 8 out of 10 of the families were led with mother and father intact because they were married, and they were succeeding in the culture when all of these things were going against the people of color, like real racism, and not that crap they talk about today, which is just playing loosey-goosey with the terms.
Right.
And that is reversed into where now 8 out of 10 of the families are being led by single mothers, and they're pedestalizing the mothers for, oh, you go girl, look at you. And like, wait a minute, hold on. When you take the father out of the home, you are circumventing the potential for that home to be successful, and then also limiting the potential for the children to escape poverty. So regardless of what I saw happen with other segments of the American population, we saw our women in the American of African descent community, we saw them say, well, they would rather get a check from the government and keep the man out of the house. Well, if we were to be honest, if we turn this back to where making families great again and making fathers great again, would we not have a tremendous impact on the role of society at large? Because within the church community, we see that if you help fathers obtain and maintain their rightful place, you help change the family, you help change the community, and that has an impact throughout the rest of that community.
Yeah.
But instead, I've seen a lot of the churches acquiesce to supporting feminism.
Well, and how pathetic is it that we have allowed the entirety of the role of fatherhood to be mitigated down to the equivalent of a paycheck?
Child
And,
support.
right. Well, not only that, even from a child support or a government perspective, but how many men that are fathers that are still in sexless, dead marriages, that their kids resent them and everything else, they see that that is their only role.
You're right.
I provide money for this household, and that's it. That's the only contribution I have to make. And so if you don't want to be nothing more than a paycheck that can be easily replaced, you have to make yourself more to your family than just a paycheck. You have to be involved in other ways that they cannot replace you with just more dollar bills.
Yeah. It has to be more that defines you in the family than the fact that, what do you mean, Dad? You just a guy that sleeps in the room with Mom and who you bring a check by every now and then.
Right. Yeah.
That is a sad statement for a kid to say to her dad. Say, Dad, you're gone so much that we had to retrain the dog to keep him from attacking you.
So how do we model ourselves to be, actually, you know what, Jeff, I'm just going to ask you this, because you talked about this in your presentation. Tell us more about what you're doing with martial arts and with these other things. I think you embody this idea of aspirational fatherhood, where you are not the kind of dad that makes fatherhood look like it's the death of ambition, it's the end of masculinity, it's the end of self-development. You model fully integrated, continually growing fatherhood is for your kids. How do you do that? Tell us more about what that looks like.
Well, I believe to be a man, period, and a father, just a man in our society is to be a guardian of excellence and standards. That's
Say
what
that
men
one more time, please.
A man is a guardian of excellence.
Guardian.
And he defends those standards. And so with my children, I told you I don't believe in leadership styles. There's just one leadership style, just lead by example. So my boys started exhibiting interest in sports. So unfortunately for me, at the age of 45, it meant I had to start boxing again. So, and I had to get in a ring with 20-year-olds and mix it up to show them that, you can be hit. You can train seriously and you can get good at this stuff. And so I've never asked my children to do anything I won't do. I've always led by example, whether it's in art, writing. I still write them letters in cursive because I told them they needed to learn cursive. So there's everything I've asked them to do, I do first. I do it first and last.
It's the
I
opposite
also
of
make
hypocrisy.
sure, and I make sure that they learn how to take care of themselves. The first thing they see in the morning is me, and the last thing they see at night is me praying with them. I'm there in the beginning and the end. And when they get assigned responsibilities, I expect that of them. And they know how to do that. To the point where I rarely even have to have rules in my house. My children know to be reasonable, right? Your room doesn't have to be perfectly clean. It should never rise to the level of my attention. And if you have my respect and nothing has risen to the level of my attention, the answer is always yes. You want to go hunting rabbits? The answer is yes. You want to go to the bounce house? The answer is yes. You want to climb trees? I'm getting up there with you. If you don't have my respect, it's just like real life. The answer is always no.
Man, what a great model. I'm stealing that one. That's fantastic. That's great. All right. What about the rest of you guys? What do you do? How do you make fatherhood something that, because what I love about this is you keep growing.
Yes.
You keep getting better.
Yes, I have to.
Yeah, right? You have a moral obligation to do that.
I have to lead them in growth.
Exactly.
And they follow me.
How do you guys do this? How do you make fatherhood aspirational and desirable in that way where you keep growing and you keep leading through that example?
Well, for me, something happened during my time of of self-reflection after having successfully getting laws changed in 11 states. I put on a workshop in the Fatherhood program for men whose choice was they could either be in that program or go to jail. And I decided I would take that opportunity to help them see that every last one of them had gifts, talents, and abilities that they could and that they needed to develop. And they could make this moment in their life, even while it was miserable, a turning point. Mm-hmm. The name of my workshop was called The Naked Truth. It was Naked Truth University. And I said, one way or the other, you're going to graduate from this university. You either going to graduate as a victim or a victor, and it's up to you to choose. And it turned out so well that the men asked, can I come back? And can I bring my cousin? Like, where were you when I was a teenager, when I was 13 and 12? Because I never heard this stuff before.
So what was it? Was it just helping them see that they have value that they can develop and then offer?
It was that plus how to put together a path to victory would help. Because we as men have been sold a bill of goods about you're supposed to just figure it out all by yourself. Mm-hmm. You're just supposed to suffer in silence. And I observed that the women don't do that crap.
Yes.
In fact, they will band together. They will, okay, all right, hold on. All right, there's enough crying. Now it's time to get up, girl. They would put together a plan. They would work together. They would move from the place of despair mm-hmm. out of the valley toward a place of victory by recognizing that they needed help.
I think there's a really good point to that, because I don't think it's an accident that we are simultaneously seeing a decrease in involved fatherhood while we're seeing a decrease in brotherhood. Mm-hmm. And in mm-hmm. order to be able to reach the full potential of fatherhood, dads have to have brotherhood. You have to have other men that will hold your feet to the fire or will understand the challenges of fatherhood in a way that's different than your wife understands motherhood, or that can help you be that sounding board or anything else. And I think this is another one of the narratives, sadly, that you get, the kind of happy wife, happy life, or my wife won't let me do this, where we abandon our friends mm-hmm. when we get married and when we have kids. And obviously you need to be smart about it, where your life should change when you get married. It should change when you have children. Mm-hmm. But brotherhood and fatherhood are not mutually exclusive. They're mutually beneficial.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we saw for the men was teaching them the need for brotherhood. Mm-hmm. Because what I would show them is that, hey, while you're out looking for jobs and you see applications, is because the men started to pay attention to what each other's gifts, talents, and abilities were. I said, listen, guys, the way that you guys are affected by the system being adversarial, you guys are not enemies. The Caucasian guy, you're not the enemy of the black guy and the Hispanic guy. I said, you're all being pimped by the system at a different level, and you're all income-producing property for the state.
That's right.
So if you guys would start working as a unit against the way the state works, and I taught them how to lobby and how the legislative process worked, because they thought their voice didn't matter. Mm-hmm. When I start showing them how, as one guy, you might not be able to change it all by yourself, but you could sure as heck start a fire in the minds of those people who could help you.
You give them a shared goal, you give them purpose, and you give them the ability to start to move forward. You give them a taste for victory.
And they saw results.
Amazing. Amazing. All right, gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure doing this with you. Why don't we start over here? And Trevor, tell us where people can find you if they want to get more from you.
Yeah, find me at trevorloudon.com. But you'll have to put that in the search bar at the top of the page. You can't Google it because Google's forgotten my IP address.
Which is exactly how you know he's worth paying attention to.
But also, I have a movie coming out launched November 2nd called Enemies Within the Church. And it looks at the Marxism and the feminization of American Christianity. And it will address a lot of the issues, the false interpretation of love that is in many churches. The love in most churches now is very feminine rather than the masculine love that was more common. The onward Christian soldiers marching as to war ethos that used to be much more common. So please check that out. Enemies Within the Church is coming out very soon. I think whether you're Christian, atheist, Jewish, whatever, you will find a lot of value in it.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Awesome.
Cornell.
Well, for you to stay in contact with me, I invite you to connect with me. I'm Cornell Smith, the paternity coach. You can find me at thepaternitycoach.com. Thepaternitycoach.com. That gets you with that one link to all of my social media, to my YouTube channel, where you're going to see the men and boys who've been affected by paternity fraud. You will also see the link to my book. And my whole goal for participating in events like this is to inspire hope in men and boys and in the women who love them, who will stand up to fight for them.
Wonderful. Michael Foster, where can we find you?
I have a podcast that I record every once in a while, but there's like 70 episodes called It's Good to Be a Man. You'll find that on any podcast directory. Our church, our sermons are up. That's East River Church, Batavia. And you can find me in Batavia, Ohio, if you look hard enough.
Look hard enough. All right. Playing hard to get.
Well, the court has imposed a gag order on me, so even speaking to you now is illegal. But I have a network of volunteers who run a page on Facebook. So if you just go into Facebook and search for Save James, you'll see a little boot logo come up. And there's international coverage of the transgender issue relating to children. There's a lot of information about fatherhood, laws, and it covers lots of aspects of my particular case and what's going on with my children. And just search for Save James on Facebook.
Awesome. Thank you. My name is Tanner Guzzi. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, which is at Tanner Guzzi. Those are the best places to find anything related to me for fatherhood content. And with that, we thank you for joining us on this edition of the Red Man Group Live. Fatherhood is wonderful. Fatherhood is noble. Become fathers, be involved fathers, and we will see you guys on the next episode of the Red Man Group. Thank you. Welcome back to the 21 Convention Second Patriarch Edition live in Orlando, Florida.
Welcome to the 22 Convention.
Welcome back to the 21 Convention 2020 of Orlando, Florida, being held for the first time ever at our very first and inaugural 21 Summit event. Welcome to 21 Summit in Orlando, Florida.
Well, here we go. We risked again with the 22 Convention, the Patriarch, and 21 Convention, all three stages together in one event.
Not only did we sit down and say we're going to come together and meet in mass, but we're going to take it a step further. We are going to dare have a conversation about the sexes openly, honestly, and engage the woman that.
Like, I am amazed at how well this went. We did a brand new event, we did the second Patriarch, and we did the main event for the 19th time.
It's so much more than sitting in an audience watching a man on a stage. The conversations in the hallways, the connections that people make, the challenging, the collaborations.
And that's what we need. It all starts with men. And it's not just men. That's what I like about this. You know, we don't want to overreact to feminism and then hate women. That's not it. This is about men getting their act together, doing what they're made to do.
You had meals, you had to run security, you had to run travel plans, you had to ensure people were where they needed to be. 3 stages, cameras everywhere, and it was pulled off with flawless execution.
It's evolved so much. I really appreciate how Anthony has allowed you speakers to evolve and to grow and to share that and to encourage that with all the other men here. To hear so much talk on family and fatherhood, there's more depth, there's more room for who they could be.
Is the word patriarchy or patriarch offensive to you in any way?
Not to me personally.
Okay.
Not at all. It's something that I cherish it. I love it. I grew up wanting it.
Cherish the patriarchy.
I do.
In mansplaining news, a 3-day conference for women led by men hopes to make women great again.
Well, women need to be taught how to be great again. Not my words.
We do. Like how to land a husband, how to lose weight, how to pop out a bunch of kids.
Why do men think they need to fix the problems of women?
Well, it says the world's ultimate event for women.
In Orlando, Florida, that's going to be the scene of the crime. It's mansplaining palooza. You say no to the toxic bullying feminist dogma.
Patriarchy is the future.
It's good to see it in person. Until I got here and saw it, and you can see the people in the audience, you see the men that are here committed to listening. I mean, it's just changed my idea of what the conference is. The professionalism, the staff, the way everything is organized. It's given me a different perspective about this particular idea, and I'm ready to put some more fire into it.
Welcome to Dream World, ladies and gentlemen.